If I were you, I would keep watching this video all the way to the end. Okay, when you hear sentences like this, are they confusing to you? In today's lesson, it's not going to be your typical boring grammar lesson. This is real life English. So I'm going to give you 10 conditional sentences that you will actually be using in your everyday English. And you'll hear English speakers like myself use these all of the time in conversations. I'm going to give you the tips that will help you actually say these correctly so that you're not sounding awkward or making grammatical mistakes that are super embarrassing. So stick with this lesson because it's really going to be helpful, but it's not going to be boring. If you want to learn more about these phrases with a PDF, a quiz, and a community, you can visit EnglishWithKayla.com. That's my website, or visit the link below to join my membership. All right, let's get started with this lesson. What is a conditional sentence? A conditional sentence gives a possibility and a result. So most of our sentences are going to start with if. I will give you a way to kind of change that up if you want to. And then you're saying the condition and you're saying the result, or what's going to happen if all of this goes to plan. The first most common conditional that we use is we say, if I were you. If I were you, I'd study more English. So we always use were in this conditional, even though it's kind of confusing that we start with if I. If I were you, I'd apply for that job.
If I were you, I'd leave.
So we can use this conditional all the time to give advice, and it's considered pretty polite to give advice this way. So never say, if I was you. If I was you sounds awkward. Even native English speakers make this mistake. So if you just get used to saying, if I were you, you'll get this conditional correct and you'll be using it all the time. This is the best way to give advice using a conditional sentence. So for the next sentence, we're going to be talking about weather a lot here. If you give a real possibility of something that can happen, like it's going to rain, or it's going to storm, or it's going to be hot, or it's going to be snowy, and then you say what's going to happen based on that weather, you can use this conditional structure. So for this conditional, you're always going to use the present tense first, and then what will happen, the result will be in the future tense. It sounds awkward and it's incorrect if you use the future tense for both. If it will rain, then we will cancel the picnic. That is incorrect. You need to say, if it rains, we will cancel the picnic. So we start with present and then we move to future. So this conditional is used all the time when we're talking about our plans or what will happen, especially based on weather conditions or other conditions that we can kind of see. I bet that you have said this conditional before. If I had more time, then I'd travel the world.
If I had more time, I'd love to.
So in this conditional, we're using something that is not real. It's imaginary first, some sort of condition that's imaginary. So if I had more time, most people feel like they don't have enough time to do everything they want to do in life. So I feel like this is so common. You don't have more time. So if I did, I'd travel the world. What would you do if you had more time? If I had more time, I'd practice piano. So instead of saying, if I had more time, I'd practice piano, you can also say, if I had more time, I would practice piano. It's your choice if you want to use the contraction here, the shortened speech or not. It sounds just fine either way. A really common conditional sentence or scenario here would be, if I had $1 million. There's a really famous song, if you haven't heard it, by a band called the Bare Naked Ladies, where they talk about, if I had $1 million. If I had $1 million, I'd rule the world, which is so funny because $1 million obviously isn't an unlimited amount of money. You could spend it probably pretty fast. Any dreams, wishes, or hypotheticals are going to follow this sentence. If I had $1 million, or if I had more time, or if I was braver, then I'd do this. Have you ever had a really big regret and you think, if I had done this, then everything would have gone well? Well, you're going to use this conditional sentence then. If I'd studied harder, I would have passed the test. If I had left earlier, I wouldn't have missed my flight. So this conditional is used just to express you wish things would have happened in a different way. Now, a common mistake that English learners use when saying this one is, if I would have studied harder, I would have passed the test. Or if she would have left earlier, she would have been on time. We need to drop the would have here if it's had. If I had studied harder, I would have passed the test. If she had left earlier, she would have been on time. So it's a little confusing because you're going to use had in the first clause and would have in the second to say what would have happened. Hopefully, this clears up the mistake that is commonly most made. The next conditional is the zero conditional. It's so easy to use. We're just stating facts. We're just stating the truth. We're saying what's real, and we're just using the present simple future tense. So we say, if we heat water to 100 degrees Celsius, it will boil. If I have to walk, I will get sweaty. So these are just true facts. There's nothing that is pretend here or imaginary. You're just stating the truth. The zero conditional is so easy to use. Unless you try, you'll never know if you can succeed. So this conditional is a little tricky because it's starting out with a negative. It's one that's not using if.
Well, you never know unless you try.
So unless is already a negative, so never use not after saying unless. Unless we leave now, we'll be late. Another example is unless you save your money, you'll never be able to afford a car. This conditional can be a little tricky at first because you have to get used to saying unless as the negative instead of saying if you don't or if not, but it can be really natural and it can be really useful in your everyday conversations. So a really good conditional sentence that you can use in your more formal speeches or more formal conversations or even in writing is had I known. Had I known. You never say had I knew, had I knew. Native speakers, again, they mix up these tenses a lot of times when it comes to conditionals, but it sounds the most natural and it is correct to say had I known. So again, we're going to go back to our weather examples because they're the easiest for me to explain and for you to understand. Had I known it was going to rain, I would have canceled my outdoor party. Or had I known it was going to cost so much money, I would have never gone to this restaurant. So you're kind of using this a lot of times to regret things or to say what you would have done differently if you had different knowledge before starting a situation. And again, this is just a different way to present your information. You could say, if I had known, but you can just drop the if and say, had I known, had I known. And a lot of times, if someone says something that, yes, it would have been useful to know before I took action or before I did something, like I had an outdoor party and it rained, and someone said, well, you should have canceled the party. It was going to rain. You say, well, had I known. Sometimes we just respond with, had I known. Had I known, yes, of course I would have canceled it had I known. So again, this next conditional is a bit more formal, but again, super natural and useful in your conversations. If need be. If need be. Try saying that. It's actually very satisfying to say. It's really nice, crispy sentence. If need be. If need be.
Javelin, if need be.
So this just means if it's necessary or if it's needed. If someone says, can you help me on this project? And you can say, if need be, I'll stay late and help you. So if it's necessary, I will stay late. So you're offering your services in this situation. So don't change need into any other form in this conditional. Don't say if it's needed, if needs. Just use this conditional because it's correct and it's the most natural way to say if it's necessary, if need be. A lot of times, if you're planning something out with someone, especially when it comes to a business plan or an event, you can say, if need be, we can get extra tables out for everyone to sit at. Or if need be, we can use this room instead of this one. So you're just kind of coming up with different scenarios and what you would need in those scenarios when you use this conditional, if need be. If you've ever had a really strong regret and you're like, oh, I wish so bad I would have done something differently, you can say, if only I had done something differently, if only he had listened to me. So you're saying, like, I really wish this would have happened to prevent something bad from happening. A lot of times we say this about our children, oh, if only he would have listened. So this just means he made a mistake because he did not listen to my advice as his mother or as, the elder person.
If only I had a new job.
And this is a really emotional phrase that you can use just to, show that you're really regretful that something happened. In really tragic scenarios too, we'll use this conditional. We'll say, oh, if only he would have, used his seatbelt or something like that, especially if it's a really big tragedy, if only. And for the last conditional today, we're going to end on a more happier, optimistic, positive note. Our conditional is if all goes well. If all goes well.
If all goes well, perhaps tonight.
We can say if it all goes well. So we're just saying, if everything goes according to plan or well or good, then we'll do this or then this will happen. So for instance, if you're talking about a plan that you have and you're hoping to finish a project, you could say, if it all goes well, we'll be done with the project by Friday. So this just presents, everything is in good condition, everything goes as according to plan. So again, this is the first conditional. You're using the present simple. Don't try to mix it up by using, the future tense here at the beginning to say if all goes well or if it all goes well. If I were you, I would visit englishwithkayla.com or just use the link below this video to check out my website because I have more resources when it comes to using these conditionals in your everyday conversations. And I know you probably have questions because some of these are very tricky. You can go into my community if you're a member and you can ask me questions about the lessons and I will respond and other motivated English learners will respond as well. Thank you guys again for watching this English lesson. I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.